So I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing our next presenter. Konia's family ran a dairy farm in Wai'anae Valley for many years. As a child, she remembers spending several summers at the dairy. She has vivid memories of large family parties, riding horse, watching her dad milk the cows, of course, as well as riding in her uncle's tractor bucket with her cousins through the pastures. Through the years, she has had a continual relationship with many individuals and organizations in Wai'anae, primarily through her work as a planner and now as an educator. Konia is currently pursuing a doctorate in urban and regional planning and is presenting her research on Aina-based education and site planning. Please welcome Konia.
Aloha, everyone. Aloha. It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming, and especially thank you to the organizers of this event. I know it takes a lot of time and energy to come to these things, so thank you so much. I will try my darndest not to bore you or go over time. So, introduce myself and explain how I got to this point in my research. So, I work at the Center for Hawaiian Studies. And before I worked there, and I'm currently a PhD candidate in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. And before that, I worked for a very, very small planning company in downtown Honolulu. And while I worked there, on a few occasions, I was able to work with Hawaiian community. But there were a few things that nagged at me while I did this work. The first thing was that what I noticed was planning had become such a thing that only really rich developers and large landowners could afford this service. So on those few occasions that I was able to work with Hawaiian community, I realized that I was almost ill-equipped to help or to kokua, because the way that I was trained was in a very, very Western way. So for example, the land use categories that I had to operate under were developed in the 70s, and they were really developed with an eye towards urban development and the protection of very, very large agricultural land uses. Many of us remember sugarcane and pine. So what I realized was when I had these chances to work with Hawaiian community, I was very ill-equipped to deal with rectifying or reconciling their desire to do Aina-based work, small-scale work, and the way that I was trained to really accommodate, these large landowners, large developers. And it always nagged at me, and it still nags at me. So in my position at UH, I always thought that I'd be able to come back and circle back to take care of some of these nagging issues. So what I've tried to do here with my work is to marry these ideas of planning, physical planning. How do you look at a community and think, oh, maybe we should put the road over there. Maybe we should build the houses over here. Maybe we shouldn't. But how do you answer those questions? And so so there's the planning interest. I'm very interested. I could walk through a city and just be like, wow, that's really cool. But on the other hand, now I work at a university. So how can I marry these two things? So that's really what I'm trying to get at through this question of how does Aina teach? Not only how does Aina teach in Aina-based schools like Hawaiian culture charter schools, but what is it really that these schools can help me learn about being a better planner, about being an indigenous planner? So that's what this is about. So it's really a little bit of a double play on this mana'o. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go, yay! Okay, wait, let me put this thing down here. The inquiry, what am I asking? And if I can fast forward it, it'll be really cool. I'll let you in on the secret if I can figure it out. Okay, basically 3 things that I'm trying to examine here is understanding how it is that Aina serves as the foundation for Hawaiian culture public charter schools, okay? I'm working with charter schools. The second thing is to understand the dynamics involved with this kind of education, where Aina is really the foundation and the core thing around which education evolves. And the third thing is, how can I apply these kinds of dynamics to planning? Okay, but first I gotta warn you of a couple of things. I am in the middle of doing my research, so I'm still formulating my ideas. And the other thing is that this presentation is really about learning how to do more localized, more indigenous planning. And I'm working with these schools so that they can provide some insight to help me do this. And lastly, this presentation is meant to be provocative rather than conclusive. I hope that you walk away going, huh, what? How come? Okay, instead of going, yeah, that's, no. Okay, I want us to come up with, sometimes asking the question is the most important thing. My position, all of us have positions, we have judgments, we have places where we come from. Here's mine with regard to this study. Planning, the way that I was taught planning and learned planning and practiced it came from a history of colonialism. And oftentimes in planning, it's very much dominated by these very linear processes. If you do A is going to get you to B, and B is going to get you to C, and we're going to slap a bow on it, it's going to be fine. It doesn't work that way. It don't work that way. And also, planning tends to favor scientific knowledge most times, where you have the planner comes in as the expert, as if we know everything. We have our spreadsheets as if we know everything. And so it kind of leaves very little room for indigenous knowledge to come to the forefront and to play equally as we solve oftentimes design-based issues. Okay. And the last thing is that indigenous planning has served indigenous people poorly. No, not indigenous planning. Planning has served indigenous people poorly. Look around Hawaii. We heard what the gentleman before us had to say. So, okay. I had read a book. This is the State Sanctions Legitimate Knowledge. This is a book. It's called The Seeds We Planted. It was written by Noelani Goodyear Ka'opua, who works at the University of Hawaii. And basically what she said is, she makes this point in this book, and she makes several points, but one that's more pertinent to me is that the way in which the state sanctions teacher certifications, the way in which they apply state assessments, it really serves to sanction what is legitimate knowledge. Yeah, you have to sort of conform to what these things are. I argue similarly that the way in which the state positions land use categories, it sanctions what is legitimate land uses as well. So, historically speaking, Hawaii, most people probably don't know this, Hawaii was one of the first states to establish a general plan in the United States, a general plan. This was in 1961. And this system was created as a result of a couple of forces at that time. Well, three things. You have to remember at that time the Democrats have already come into power in the legislature. The old guard's kind of on the wings. They in the wings now. They ain't never disappeared. They in the wings. And the Democrats really wanted to institute a pro-development ideology. So we have a lot of development happening. That's why you see a lot of development happening in the 70s, because it was a policy of the Democratic Party. And on the other hand, these land use categories were born out of the need to protect the interests of large agriculture. They're still around. Okay, so the state in the end, through a general plan established in 1961, they come up with a land use category, 4 categories: agriculture, urban, conservation, and rural designations. Any activity in the state of Hawaii has to conform to these 4 uses. Now, my question to you is, one point. The first point is, when you take these 2 things together, it really serves to filter out the Hawaiian. We are no longer present in the landscape, and with a lot of my work through this research, we're not even present in education anymore. Okay, so these 2 things together tend to filter out the Hawaiian. But let me ask you about this one. How many functions of land or terms did our kupuna have for land? Yeah, at least hundreds, if not 1,000, and now we got 4. Okay, so keep going. So that's the whole point. But why Hawaiian culture public charter schools? The first reason is because, thank you, education versus corporate business models. For my work, I needed to get at the point of Aina. I wanted to understand what it meant. And basically, Hawaiian culture charter schools work to keep their doors open. There's not this huge profit motivator driving their activities. They want to teach. Okay, so for me, the question that I was asking, it really was very helpful. And they're a public institution. So planning, okay, next. On the planning side, there are many, many articles actually written and very, not too often read, but many articles written about how planning focuses on these very, very singular, dominant, corporate economic-based alternatives or design solutions. Yeah, so it leaves very little room for alternative design solutions to be seen. And what we end up seeing around us are the needs of the dominant interests in the built environment. A good example of that is when you go to downtown Honolulu, the central business district. Okay, so what is significant though about this is that, and what we have to remember is that when you talk about place, you talk about site design, you talk about architecture, land uses, these things aren't neutral. They're not universal. Yeah, that's an important point. They're not neutral. These aren't neutral places. So the implication in planning, okay. Oh, there it is. Let me emphasize that. Very important. One more time. The implications for planning is that, one more time, we lose sight of the pace and scale of development. Okay, so we have these huge economic drivers telling us how to build, where to build, what to do. And we have very little room for, we have pace and scale of development impact long-term stability. In other words, short-term gain at the expense of long-term stability. One more time, relational dynamics, okay. It leaves very little room, these kind of singular alternatives, leaves very little room for relations to foster or to become the driver of development. Okay, so by this, what I mean is, for example, in Australia, Aboriginal architects, they talk about this concept of leaving the ancestors in the country. And basically what they question is the use of things like Aboriginal symbols in the built environment as representations of themselves, of their culture. But they question it, and sometimes they just outright reject it, because for them, and similar to us, for them, they argue sometimes you have to reject these symbols and their inclusion because the representations of these for Aborigines, the significance of places derived from occupation and the creation of these areas by ancestors and their continued occupation and use over time. So basically what is important here is that, the significance of place is lost. Yeah? Something just becomes a symbol. But no more mana. So let me give you an example. For any of you who have ever been to Kanuoka Aina Charter School, very beautiful school. If you've ever been to the interiors of the school, They have these huge paintings that just describe mo'olelo of the place, the kupuna who come from that place, the akua. It's a beautiful place, even like the use of ohia poles to, around the school. So, one more time. Okay, so you have this kind of, this architecture, the interior of design, the homeliness of it to bring family, community in, and it's very well situated contextually in that community. If you take this school and pop it in the middle of Waikiki, now we've lost our sense of place. We've lost that sense of significance. And it becomes almost borderline token. It becomes insulting. Because that significance to place and all of those things that come with it, all of that mana that comes with it is now lost. So that's sometimes a very powerful ways to question the degree to which we can actually reject this kind of token symbolism, yeah? All right, so what's the main point here? Bridging education and planning. To me, this is a real opportunity for positive dynamic change. At this stage of my work, working with the schools, I realized that these schools have such broad scopes of education that we really have an opportunity for positive change through education and planning. So here's education. Some schools, they have a very heavy ethic that involves community and family, for example. To the degree that some schools talk about community economic-based development because they see themselves as an asset that can help community to just stand up on its own, on their own terms. Some schools, they try to talk about well-being and spirituality. They figure out how can we bring in aipono? How can we have better food in our school? And it's a policy of the school. Other schools talk about the integration of resources and ecology. I asked this one school, what do you hope that your students walk away with when you're done, when they're done here? And this, she's a principal, and she said, I hope my students see themselves as a part of the ecology. That's really different from saying, I hope my kids see themselves as being in a good position for a real profitable career. It's a very different mindset. So my work, I'm really hoping to be able to look at education and explain it in a positive way as it cuts across all of these issues, because that's what I'm discovering. This is the scope of education among some of these schools. And more importantly, how can it help us to do better planning? So I want to really talk about the schools because they're absolutely fascinating. I talked to 4 schools located on 3 islands, talked to about 28 people, including Department of Education people, Charter School Commission people, the chairman of the chairman of Department of Land and Natural Resources, because I realized in the end, Department of Ed doesn't always own the land that they're on. Talked to Makua, principals, Kumu, and luckily they wanted to talk to me too. All right, the schools. Ku'okala Public Charter School located, they're on a remote school located in Puna District. They're located on a very large parcel in Puna. They have a very complicated regulatory environment because half of the school is on conservation land, which is very restricted use. The other half of the school is on ag land, but when you're on ag land, you got to deal with the county. They have historic sites. They're located in a coastal area. They have Malka Rainforest, absolutely stunning place for Aina-based education. Incredibly hard to do Aina-based education for a couple of reasons for charter schools. They typically receive half or less funding per pupil. And secondly, if you're an independent school, charter school, you don't get facility support. So you end up with these poor principals who gotta be the architect, the engineer, They got to go clean the bathroom when the things stay stuck, and they got to, do the discipline, and they got to be the principal. Okay. But Ku'okala, God bless them, they probably have the most broadest scope of education, where they're very inclusive of community interests. They want to keep their students in Puna, and they're very thoughtful. They have a very strong ethic of community-based economic development, to the degree that they try to integrate it in their curriculum. Kauai Kini Public Charter School is a bilingual school located on Kauai. A rural school as well, kind of centrally located, as you can see down here, so they attract students from all sides. They're in very close proximity to Kauai Community College, which would be right over here. And they have a Punana Leo over here, and this is their school. They have a heavy, heavy ethic of college aspirations, building in college aspiration for their students. So if you want to talk about P20, all you got to do is look at the school. The college is over here, the Hawaiian language is over here, and they go to school every day over here. It's a beautiful, beautiful setup. They're probably one of the few schools located on University of Hawaii parcel. It's a 10-acre parcel. This school also has developed a curriculum that's completely built around the island. So for example, the babies, the kindergartners, they stay on site. They might learn how to do a little bit about hale building, yeah? They stay on site. They go to places around this vicinity. The older they get, they go further and further from the campus to work side by side by kupuna, to go and learn about place, and to help the practitioners upkeep place. So they have a very strong ethic of stewardship. Halau Kumana is located on Oahu in the Kona district. They're sort of in the upper part of the watershed in Makiki. They have a lease from, it's conservation land. So they have a lease from Department of Land and Natural Resources, but the lease is held by state parks. What do parks have to do with public education? I don't know, but that's where it is, okay? This school has moved many, many times. They decided to have a long-term lease, but their lease is very complicated, and I'll tell you why. They're located on conservation land. Conservation land is probably the most restricted land use in the state. And so this school, for example, because their parcel is so small, they have a very strong sustainability ethic. So when they were doing their master plan for the property, they were actually entertaining the idea of doing a bioremediation for waste. Okay? So it was either, maybe we could do this bioremediation, help reinforce in our keiki's mind sustainability. We could be good examples of sustainability. They're located next to a stream. So it became very complicated for them to try and implement this. So that's just an example of how do you get the planning to reinforce the ethic. It's not that simple. Another thing about this school is that they have worked very hard to be good neighbors with their community. And they have also, I think, in my opinion, helped the Department of Parks learn how to step into their role really as educators, not just park people, not just parks, but really now they got to take care of a school. And the school has helped the parks to step into that role. The last school, Halau Lokahi Public Charter School, they are located in Kalihi, Oahu, a Hawaiian-focused charter school. Unlike all the other schools, they're smack dab in urban Honolulu. When you ask them, I asked them, do you consider yourself an Aina-based school? They said, oh, yeah. So, but the thing is, because they have very, very good community networks, strong community networks, they can get their kids out in healthy ways on the land to do what they need to do. So one thing that I did learn is that not all Aina-based education happens, yeah, Yeah, so lots of learning about Aina can happen in a place, in this kind of environment, if you have good, strong community networks. This is like Wai'anae would be over here. Yeah. So back to the question, how does Aina teach? So I asked my friend, Ku Halau, Ku, how does Aina teach? What is it about Aina that helps Keiki to learn? She looked at me and she said, oh, I know the answer. And I said, good, tell me. And she said, Aina does not discriminate. Profound statement. And she put it this way. She said, when the river, if the stream gets big water come, go take everybody. It doesn't discriminate if you're rich, poor, skinny, ugly, no matter, you're gonna go. So Aina does not discriminate. Any child who is open, or adult for that matter speaking, who's open to the experience has an equal opportunity to learn. Unlike when you might walk into a classroom, judgment happen, judgment get passed, discrimination can happen. Okay, so oftentimes we hear the statement, education is the great equalizer. But equalizer to what? To have a good career, to make lots of money. This is a very, very indigenous way of looking at how Aina teaches, yeah? Aina teaches by relationship. So here, my friends on Kauai, you cannot foster love for land unless you've been there and worked it. So again, this goes back to Kauai Kini and their curriculum about place-based education and making it a real point for their babies to go out, work land, learn from the land, and also more importantly, learn who's doing what where, and to support them, and to be proud about it, and to be able to do it in your own language. So Aina teaches by relationship, not only by if you malama that Aina can show aloha to you, but you also can malama each other. Yeah, so this is another very profound way to look at education. Aina teaches by utility. I was talking to my friends down in Puna, and one of the teachers said this. She was thinking about the potential of land to teach, yeah? She's talking about this concept of noho nani. But when you think about a word like nani, it doesn't just mean physical beauty. It means you're useful, you're functional, you're attractive because of your ability to do things. Now, this is a very key idea because today, we have used Aina almost to the degree that we're dealing with what? A lot of climate change because we've exploited so much this idea of utility from Aina. So how do we bring back these ethics, really, of utility? So she would also talk about pa'amakahana. So it's really place as a means of practice, reinforcing practice, and learning about different kinds of methods. And to be of service, really. To be of service. Last one. Aina teaches by a genealogy of knowing. What? I was always very struck by the degree to which these teachers always talked about genealogy. They didn't talk about the history of the school. They talked about the genealogy of the school. And it was very important for their keiki to know how this school was built. Whose hands built this school? Whose hands made this lo'i? Yeah? So not only can I tell you, so for these keikis, the potential of this genealogy is not only can I tell you about this plant, but I can chant its genealogy. I can tell you how Kupuna planted it over here, and I can take you to the people in the community who planted it like this, and that kind of stuff, and that's what we did. That's a genealogy. Now that's knowing, yeah? And it's a very place-specific and it's very resource-specific. It's beautiful way. It's a beautiful way of doing education. It has community relevance. And it can also help with the revival of practice, or it can help reinforce practice and custom of that area. She also talked about this, this idea of academic Hawaiian cultural knowledge. In her mind, it wasn't the Western knowledge is up here and Hawaiian knowledge is over here, or Hawaiians up here, In her mind, it was perfect harmony. These things must work together. So, okay, this part you guys got to hold on to your seats because I'm still trying to think about these things. Grounding, planning, and practice. So some of the themes that I think I heard, and I'm sure there's more, is Aina as family. Identity is really tied to place. We can talk about the ethics of utility, the ethics of use. Do you use something until it's completely just done? No. The fluid nature of land versus contained zones. This speaks directly to land use zoning. The integration of spaces, places, and people. In other words, you can have a campus, but this campus is really so out there that your campus is really your island. It's your moku. It's that Aina out there. So, okay. I almost pawed, but this is the rough part. My half-baked ideas on Indigenous planning. Integrate a genealogy of knowing. What I believe this can help planners do is to move beyond these singular ideas of corporate development driving planning. It can open up a way for relational dynamics to enter and to come into really the forefront of our consciousness. And we can do it in a way that moves beyond token symbolism, yeah? And it really creates an opportunity for indigenous representations of place, or even space, yeah? Our ideas of space, and give meaning as well as explanation to its nature and significance. Those things are pretty important. Utility of knowledge gives meaning to indigenous identity. The utility of knowledge can also serve as a means of critique. It can help us to look at something and say, maybe that's not a good idea. As well as create shared context or meaning. In this sense, the built environment can move beyond the concepts of just physical space that we inhabit, but we can also begin to see it as an expression and an expression of identity, really. The last one, articulate beliefs as land use. So I was reading this book, and it was written by Jane M. Jacobs. It's called The Edge of Empire. And she's reflecting on the Aborigines' experience during the period of British Empire building and that point when they were all engaged with each other. And basically what she says is, it was very easy for the British to colonize Aborigines because the Aborigines always just existed in this state of belief. It wasn't as if the beliefs were related to land use or property. It was just this state of belief. The sacred people, they don't have a need for property. Therefore, it's very easy to colonize and exploit. So planners, in my opinion, need to get better at articulating policy through the view that indigenous relationships of land are a matter of right and use. So we're not just stuck in this period of this phase of being in the need of being historically preserved. We need to move. This is the 21st century. We're still here. So we're talking about restoration and utilization. I'm not saying that we don't have a need for preservation or conservation. I'm just saying that we're alive and we're well. And we need to move beyond this state of being historically preserved. Yeah? So, thank you very much. I hope I didn't bore you to death. But if any of you are interested in looking at some of these works, I know some of you out here go to university. And if you want some information on schools, there it is. But thank you so much. That's really the first time that I've really talked about this with live people. So.
Here in your presentation, I see such a tie-in with Huliko'a. So have you thought about pursuing archaeology since it's Aina based?
When I was in undergraduate school, it did cross my mind, but I wanted To be honest with you, I met very motivational people who were in planning. The few Hawaiians who were in urban and regional planning. And they said to me, you should be one planner. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll go try. So it wasn't, the only time that crossed my mind was really back then. When before the gray.
Mahalo. How tough of a nut is it to crack to get some of these ideas that you shared into policy at the planning at the state level? Or I mean, that I'm sure that's a whole nother trip. But
I will tell you this: there are a nice crop of Hawaiians in urban planning. Not a whole lot. We're still a minority, but not a whole lot. But what is beautiful about it is that they speak their language, they do their culture, and they're able to look at things through a different lens. Yeah, they have this ability to do heavy-duty kupuna lensing on issues. That's very, very good. And these new crops of students who, some of whom, not all, some of whom are coming out of the university, again, they practice their culture. They are practitioners. And it's not like you're not looking to this older person. Now we can look to a young voyager, yeah, who have these different ideas about things. And so to me, that's very hopeful. I think it's education and putting the task back on the planning environment to say, we're here. We never disappear. You didn't kill us off. And you need to respond. It's not the perfect answer, but that's what I think.
You have any other?
No, I just have a comment. Perhaps OHA should hire you, because I just went to one of their things on Saturday, and they're doing one right now next door. But they were talking about the land that was given in lieu of the monies to the Hawaiian people from the airport. So they showed us the map of the land, Makai, of Ala Moana. But they were given the land and then said, okay, you cannot make buildings.
Yeah.
So my thing is, find the tallest building there, which is the medical facility, and make all the buildings that size, but make plenty. But they could use your help.
Well, mahalo. I mean, that's a critical question. You know, let's say, for example, sovereignty. We do have some kind of something to exercise with real Aina, we the bosses. Are we going to have 4 land use codes? You know, like these are pertinent, very pertinent questions. And places like OHA, Kamehameha schools, they're really at the front line of trying to figure out hard decisions. You know, what are Hawaiian people going to do about urban environments? Hawaiians live in urban environments too. How do we make it work so that we preserve ourselves in the course of it? But thank you for that. Thank you so much, everyone.